Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Cabinet Maker Profit System podcast. Today, we're taking many of you, many of you across the world. For those of you who are already listening from New Zealand, from Australia, well, this is an Australian guest I'm bringing in. And listen, let's take a step back from this show for a second. You know, when you watch a TV show or you hear on the news about this entrepreneur who lives this amazing lifestyle, who goes out and does fantastic things, like fantastic, what people would call their bucket list items, like goes out and skis in the Alps and sails across the world and paraglides and parasails and windsurfs, all those things. And you think, wow, that's a great premise for a TV show. Well, that guy exists, and he's a cabinet maker, and he's a cabinet maker just north of Sydney, Australia. So for those of you who kind of have a general vague idea of where Australia is, you know where Australia is. Go down to the bottom right corner, and that's where he is. He's very close to something called Manly Beach, which is a famous, very famous beach down in Australia. If you were to lay a map of Australia over a map of America, Sydney would be just about where South Carolina is, right? So he's down in that bottom right quadrant. Anyways, listen, that's not where he spends a lot of his time. He travels the world, and he still runs a cabinet shop while he's doing that. So today, I'm going to be talking to Darren McKavanaugh about work-life balance versus sales and profits. Let's get to the episode. Mr. Darren McKavanaugh, how are you?
Good, thanks. How are you?
I'm really good, man. I appreciate you being on here. I know it's not early for you. It's like 10 in the morning for you.
Yeah, no, I've already been to work and came back home to do this where it was a bit quieter. So
yeah,
all good.
So people tend to forget, we get in our bubble. We drive, we're in Michigan. We drive to our shop in Michigan. We drive home in Michigan. They might hear your accent and think, where's this guy? He must be in the deep South. Well, you're really South. Where are you?
Sydney, about 2 minutes from Manly Beach.
Yeah. Oh, you're that close to Manly Beach.
Yeah, I'm at the moment and work's 5 minutes from Manly Beach.
Yeah. So you're in Sydney, Australia.
Yeah. And the kitchen maker's in Brookvale.
How far is that?
From here, a 5-minute drive.
Oh, nice and close. Yeah.
Yeah, it's nice and close.
Well, hey, listen, before we get into it too far, Darren McKavanaugh, can you tell me who the heck you are and why you would be talking to all these cabinet makers and architectural mill workers all around the world?
I've been a cabinet maker basically since I left school. I'm 47 next month. My parents had a cut-to-size business where they supplied kitchen companies and small builders, and I just found that a bit monotonous, just, putting stuff in the machines and coming out there. And so I started building kitchens as well. And then, I started my own business when I was 27, 28.
Wow. Yeah.
Called it Kitchen Maker. And I've been going ever since. I still got my first apprentice working for me 18 and a half years later.
That's right. I saw that on your website. And you started in a shared shop. That's what it looked like when I read your bio. Yeah.
Yeah, and my parents had the cut-to-size place, and I had 40 square metre mezzanine floor, and they used to cut everything for me. Like, we still get everything cut to size. Yeah. They used to cut everything for me. Then we'd take it upstairs with a forklift, make it up, and then ship it out and install it. So.
Crazy. Well, you're not here to talk about your ability to put together open-face rectangles, right?
No, I hope not, because most people can do that fairly well. We teach someone to do that in their first week.
That's not what you hear. I often remind the people listening to this show, look, square is square, level is level, plumb is plumb. We're here to run a business, the business of being a contractor. And specifically here, we're cabinet makers, architectural mill workers, furniture makers. But you're here today to talk to us about the work-life balance that's so important and many of us miss, but how to balance off the work-life balance against sales and profits, because you, Darren, you've got a pretty particular hobby. What's that hobby?
Well, in the last, 4 or 5 years, I've done 3 ski seasons in the Alps.
Yeah.
So the first one was for 3 months, second one for 4 months, and the one after that was until COVID shut down. So it was about 2.5, 3 months.
Yeah.
And then I've also spent, in 2018, I spent 7 months sailing my boat around the Med. And then this last year and a bit, I spent 13 months. I sailed from Greece through the Med for 5 months and then across the Atlantic and spent 6 months in the Caribbean.
That is crazy.
That was a great time.
I bet it was. And the whole time you're still running the Kitchen Maker.
Yeah, I was away 13 months, and I've my staff run it, and they did a fine job. Really good.
Yeah. So there's a lot of people listening right now that so Darren, let's be real. Most people listening have trouble taking a weekend off. And so the fact that you've been able to take that. Yeah. Okay. Let's get back to that. Yeah. When did you make the decision to take some personal time for yourself and ski or sail?
I always took a lot of holidays, and I employed a manager 12 or 13 years ago now, and I said to him, look, I want to take, part of me is I do a lot of holidays, and I said I want to take time off. And I guess I always trained the people that was there, like I put the time into them, but also I just delegate. I basically just delegated myself out of a job. I go in there and there's pretty much, apart from doing a bit of accounting and reading the reports when I'm away, and a few phone calls just for words of advice, like, a manager might be stuck on something or have a staff problem. We might talk about that. But other than a phone call for an hour a week and a few hours looking at reports, I'm not that hands-on in the business anymore. When I'm at home now, I've had a few clients ring me and say, oh, can you look at our job? And I don't want to take on big jobs because I'm going again in December. So I'm taking on a few little jobs just so I make sure they're finished, because part of our policy is whoever starts a job, you meet a project manager, they deal with you the whole way through.
And when you say you don't want to start a job, you mean you as the project manager. Your shop is still running.
Yeah, the shop's still running. The shop's still running really well. There's 9 staff there in total. We have 4 in the office and 5 on the floor, and then me just floats between the office and the floor while I'm home. I still do a bit of general cabinet making as well from time to time and a bit of installing. I quite like it.
Yeah. And no offense, but if you don't do it every day, you're probably not the best in the shop at doing it.
Oh, for sure. And the other thing is, like I walked out the back first day I was home and I saw an apprentice making cupboard rung. I said, hey, stop doing that. And he's like, but no. I'm like, no. I said, I've actually done this. I said, just stop. I said, I'm just going to show you how to do it properly.
Yeah.
And just don't answer back. I said, you've been here for 5 minutes and you're not going to,
Yeah. Yeah. You know what so allow me to use my business coaching skills. Can I? Mm-hmm. Can I?
Yeah, of course. That's why I'm here to learn too.
Well, I have to learn as well. And so what I learned from you is that you talked about delegating without any hesitation. You just, and when you started with your manager, you said, I take a lot of vacations and I'm going to be gone a lot. You didn't apologize in the way you said it. It came out of your mouth like you'd said it before. And I think that must not wear off, but that transfers to the other people. They're like, okay, this guy knows what he wants. This guy knows what he's doing. That's just the deal.
Yeah, for sure. Like I just said, like I didn't, I don't have, in one sense, I don't have a family, so it does allow me to take more time away. But there's no reason why that anyone has to be tied to a business all the time. To me, I've read a lot of Rich Dad Poor Dad books. Robert Kiyosaki, have you heard of him?
I've met Robert. He's a great guy.
Yeah, he's a great guy. Yeah. Well, he always said, if you can't leave a business for at least 12 weeks, it's not a business, it's a job.
Yeah.
And I always said that I wanted to make our systems like McDonald's for cabinet makers. So I said any fairly decent cabinet maker would come in and pick up one of our plans and make our jobs. And that's, new guys who know what they're doing. I wouldn't say they're the best cabinet makers around, but most of the guys come in, they can pick up a plan and make, probably 80% of our jobs without too much hesitation.
Right.
And I think that's a big thing. So, and everyone, like from the office right down, we all do things the same way. Not that and we're always improving, like constant improvement.
Yeah. Do you put those systems in place, or did your manager put those systems in place?
We did a lot of them together, because if I just say we're going to do this, no one listens. So you're not saying, we definitely do a lot of it together. We discuss it before we do anything. And then occasionally I'll say, no, we're just going to do this one and I want to do it. And let's try it. If it doesn't work, I'm happy to pull it back out again.
Yeah.
But most of the time we definitely sit down and talk about it before we do it. I've got sort of 3 main guys. My foreman, my second apprentice, he's been with me bit over 14 years. Justin, who's 18 and a half years. He was my first apprentice.
Yeah.
He's one of our project managers now. And then David, my manager, who's been about 12 and a half years. And those sort of, I say the four of us sort of keep it running together.
What did the business look like before you really made a commitment to make a separation and say, I'm going to take some time off?
It was basically what it is now, but I was just selling jobs and being a project manager. So what I was doing, there's no way that no one else, why couldn't someone else do it?
Right.
That's the biggest thing. But that's the thing, like what we do is we're just making white boxes with pretty panels on. We do some, don't get me wrong, we do some really
No, I've seen your site.
Too.
Yeah, I've seen your website.
We don't just do, you know, but I mean, if you delegate, and it's also what expectations. If I didn't expect my staff to run the business and go away, I wouldn't have spent the last 13 months away.
Yeah.
So to me, it's about setting expectations about what you want. So if you want them to make a draw every 10 minutes, they're going to make a draw. If you tell them work out a way you can make 2 draws every 10 minutes, they usually will.
I think I'm trying to get myself in the head of the other business owners listening. And unfortunately, most of them are facing forward with their butt right now. And here's what I mean. But what about this? And but what about that? And so they're butt facing
just forward. Just remove that word.
I love it. Yeah. So a couple of things though that might ask. Well, but what about managing finances? But how do you know somebody's not robbing you blind? But how do you know that jobs are getting done on time? But how do you know you've got enough sales? And now I think I know the answers to these things, but I'm here to learn from you. What kind of systems do you have in place to?
I've had the same business coach for about 10 or 12 years. He doesn't come very often anymore. A lot to do with that was COVID. He used to come once. He started every 2 weeks, and then we cut it back to once a month, and now we see him about once every 3 months. But he put a set of financial reports. So every week from my bookkeeper, I get a profit and loss, a balance sheet, accounts receivable, accounts payable, a comparison report, and a KPI report. That's what I check every week. And then another thing he got us to do, which my manager does, we do a weekly sales, so who's won what, and the 2 project managers have targets. One of them, David's got a certain target because he doesn't draw and order his own jobs, where the other project manager does all his own CAD work, so his target's a lot lower. And those targets we need to do, say, call it 200 grand a month, and David's got to sell 150 of that, and Justin's got to sell 50 of it. That's not exactly the right numbers, but close enough.
Yeah.
And then they've basically got to make sure they do those sales every week. And I think a lot of people make the mistake of going at the end of a month, we go, oh, how did we go with sales? Or at the end of 3 months, how did we go with sales? It's too long. You've got to watch it every week.
That's right.
Because as soon as you start to fall off that pattern, it's really hard to come back. I take the example, I had a spray painting business as well, right next to the kitchen maker for 6 years. Unfortunately, my partner wanted to move away, and he wanted to give up painting polyurethane because it is quite dangerous. I had a business partner in that business. I don't in the kitchen maker.
Yeah.
And we got back to we had to do $3,000 a day for painting, and we only turned it around. And every night before he'd go home, his last job to do was the invoicing. So any jobs we'd painted that day, we had to invoice. And I'm like, well, Shane, it's easy. You just got to paint 38 square meters a day. And you can easily do that one guy in the spray booth. But it wasn't that easy to get the work process. But as soon as he knew what he had to do, it all changed.
Yeah, it's called, or one of the ways to talk about that is reducing it to the ridiculous. When you say, well, I've got to produce 52 of these things. No, you just have to do one a week.
That's exactly right. And we got it down to 38 square meters a day. And, it was a little bit less if you're doing a shaky kitchen because you get sand. But I said, if you just work on painting 38 square meters a day, some days we're going to do more because it's flat panel, and other days we're going to do less because it's shaker. So I said it will balance out. And, we had $15,000 a week. When we did $15,000 a week, we made money. And the first time we went away, they stopped doing little things, like they stopped labeling every piece, and the wheels slowly fell off. And I came home, and I'm like, what are we doing? Right. After 9 months, the first trip. And then we got it back on track again. And after that, he pretty much stayed on path. And we didn't make a lot of money, but it's hard. The biggest problem with poly is your customers set the price. So that's one of the reasons I got out of it, because they say, oh, we only want to pay
X.
So
I'm a systems guy and I'm a process guy. So I want to come back to an observation that you made in your own business, is that you put some systems in place and then you had the confidence to take off for a bit and do what you like to do. But when you came back, you realized that some systems had slipped. They weren't as disciplined as you had hoped.
Yeah.
Does that happen every time you go away?
It doesn't in the kitchen maker. It did in the poly shop.
Okay.
But in the kitchen maker, I think it's more because we've proved they work. Like the first time I came back after 9 months and I said to my manager, wow, you've done a good job. He said, oh, yeah, we have. He said, all the boys have pulled together. But he said, it's also the 7 years before that we put the systems together in place to make it all work.
And
we had a recipe that works. And once you've got a recipe that works, just use it. There's a, I don't want to say this, but there's a place in Sydney that does glass work. And it's glass splashbacks. And they were making a lot of money, like 7 figures. And he sold the business.
Yeah.
Now and all that, they've changed a few of the systems and it has just gone down. We don't even use them anymore. It's the only glass splashback company that I used for 15 or 16 years.
And we changed some systems, and now what went away? Their quality or their times?
Their service, timing, their price, everything just went out the door. And it's just, they've had 6 CEOs in 7 years. Ooh. And it's not owner operated anymore. It was bought by like a bigger company, which is publicly listed. But it's, and it's not. I actually rung one of the guys who's worked there forever. I said, are you back on track yet? Because I said, we're keen to start using you guys again. And he said, look, he said, for you, he said, I've got like 5 or 6 customers that I just look after now. And he said, so if you ring me, he said, I'll make sure your jobs get done. But he said, it's not the same as it was. And he said, they don't follow the last guy's systems and processes. And they actually called him back in and said, can you help us? And he didn't. But 2 weeks later, it just started slipping away again. Once you've got something that works, just stick to it.
Well, it's funny that you say that, because I run across that as a business coach as well. We put a system in place and we get a result. And then the client looks at me and says, what are we going to do next? And
it's small, like we'll change very small things. Like we'll change very small things. I use an example in my factory. A lot of places don't think you need to set up jobs. We always set up our jobs like fully before we get them painted. So we fit all the doors and panels and we fit all the appliances and stuff.
Oh, you finish them completely assembled
before we get them painted.
Oh, okay.
And I think that's a lot of point of difference to us, because I've got a new installer. He's been with me 3 months, and he said, in my last place, he said this to-do list would have had to go back, rectification list would have been 20 things on it. I've got 2. And
in North America, we call that punch list, just for everybody listening. I think rectifications is a punch list,
Yeah, we just call it a to-do list, just things to finish off.
Yeah.
You might have you might have broken a handle, or you might have chipped a panel, or it's got to get resprayed, or you might have left the cutlery tray behind, whatever it is. But he said at my last job, he said it would have been 20 plus things on this list, and he said I've got 2.
And that's and you feel that's because you assemble everything and then paint it and then attach all the trinkets and the trash, all this stuff gets attached.
We basically make it up as exactly the way it goes in the house, in the factory. We fit all the doors and panels. We fit oven. We get all the ovens and dishwashers in. We fit everything. Then we pull it apart and get it painted. It's a bit arduous, but I couldn't imagine us doing it any other way. Like if it's a wardrobe, I won't fit all the doors. We'll make up the boxes and I'll just measure all the doors and make sure they're all right. And, we'll set them off like that, if there's 6 doors in a row. But before we used to set every single thing up, and it works.
Well, that's so what let's look at those systems. So you have systems that work. You've trained everybody on the systems, and then if you do change anything, you change very slowly. So you test and measure. If it's not going to be better, it's
no. Well, example now, we're going to change the way we do our plinths. The kickboards, kick bases.
Yeah.
We've been talking about changing it. So I said, all right, the 4 of us from the office are going out to install a kitchen on Monday.
Yeah.
Oh, next Friday it got moved. Yeah. So 4 of us from the office, and we're going to write a process on how we're going to do it with our lead installer. So there's 4 of us going to the office and our main installer. We're going together and we're going to write a procedure on how we do it. We just chose a small kitchen, but we chose one that was a little bit difficult. And I've got the old system of doing the bases. We made that up, and I said, let's make the new one for this kitchen and we'll try it out. And I said, if we don't like it, we'll have the old ones there too.
Yeah. How do you track your systems, Darren? Like, so you've got a system where if I walked into your shop today, where would I see the system? Is it written on a whiteboard? Is it on a Google Drive? Is it a paper?
Most of it's on a Google Drive.
Yeah. And then how do you make sure
the
your
boys
guys
get
follow it?
every time we change something, we'll give them a printout of we've got a process for making a kitchen.
Okay.
And if we update it, we give everyone a copy. We have a meeting, we give everyone a copy, and we just walk through it. I mean, surely they put them down and don't read them straight away the first time, but when they make a couple of mistakes, I just go back to it and say, "Look, I gave you this 2 weeks ago. Read it. It's not, And I've got one guy who works for us who's got quite bad ADHD, but he can make cabinets really well, but he's crap at sweeping the floor. Why is that? Because it's just his attitude just towards sweeping the floor. He doesn't want to do it.
Yeah.
But he goes, "Oh, I can't concentrate." And I'm like, "No, that's, I said, I watch you make those kickboards and cabinets as fast as anyone else because you find that interesting and you want to do it." I said, He's only a second-year apprentice. He's good, but he's just slack on the things he doesn't want to do.
Yeah. It's funny you say
and everyone gets like that.
It's funny you say that about cleaning the floor. I've actually heard that in other shops where somebody says, "Well, I don't sweep the floor. It's, basically it's beneath me." And
I go out and do it.
I would do it too. If I don't stop to pick up a piece of paper that's on the floor, my guys aren't going to do it. I have to show that I'll do it first.
Like with me, if I go out, like say if we're falling behind on a job, which happens, and I go out to help them on site, like if we're busting to get a job finished, what I usually do is the first thing I get there doing is clean up. Because they know the job, and so I just clean up, and then I get my head around everything that's got to be done, then I'll start helping. And they see me clean up, and sure enough, they start cleaning up themselves.
They start cleaning up too. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But
funny how that works.
You couldn't. What's at work? And I'm sure most business owners, I don't really care what I do as long as it's productive. I mean, I probably don't love it. I don't love estimating. I'm sure I don't know anyone who does, but you just got to get in and do it sometimes. No one loves every part of their job.
Yeah. Well, and if you find a place that you don't love,
list of stuff to do, I always do the worst. If I've got a list of 8 things to do that day, I always do the worst one first.
Okay. Well, let's say that again, Darren. So if there's a list of 8 things to do and there's one thing that you hate the most,
I'll do that first. Because then the rest of your day is good.
That approach comes from, or I've heard that approach in Eat That Frog, which is a book by my old business partner, Brian Tracy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if you've ever read that book, but he says, look, if you have to eat a frog, if your job today is eat a frog, eat it first, eat it fast. And if you have to eat 2 frogs, eat the ugliest one first.
So is that date the ugly girl first and then marry the pretty one, right?
The pretty one later.
But I mean, if you do that, you set yourself up for a pretty decent day.
Well, it's amazing what that momentum brings, isn't it? If you start the day with a tough phone call or the tough decision or the tough conversation, the rest of the day is a cakewalk.
No, and if I've got I take this back to staff. If someone doesn't fit in now, it used to take me ages to make the decision to get rid of someone, or if you've got to make a bad phone call, to a client or whatever, just do it straight away because it's not going to get any better.
Yeah, that's
if you've got a tough job to do, just get it done.
We should have called this episode "Lessons from a Ship's Captain" because I'll tell you what, captains are very directive, right? I mean, we and as crew, we've got to rely on you to this is what's got to be done. It's not a lot of room for negotiation if you say that we got to pull that sheet or do that thing. And so you just have to do it. But I like the confidence and just hey, listen, if that guy's not working out, it's time to go. I'm sure you give them a chance to change, but there comes a point when it's not working.
No, but when you finally made the decision that they don't fit in or it's definitely not going to work, you just got to do it. I actually talking about bringing sailing into this, and I think sailing's a really good, especially for kids, as a thing to start out with because it teaches you to look after your boat. So when you do out racing, it doesn't break, and you can. But I used to sail with 2-time gold medalist from Australia, and he did 2 seasons with us, and then he worked for me for a while, but it just didn't work out because he was doing too much professional sailing. Yeah. But he said you're good at getting the bad jobs done straight away, and I mean he's I call him someone that I really look up to and admire because he's achieved a hell of a lot. He's won 9 world titles and 2 Olympic gold medals. And he said that's something that I've taken away from working with you. And, so I try and instill that in the guys too. Like if you walk in the morning, the place is a mess and you don't want to clean up, just clean up and then it's better. Or you got something hard to do, just get in and get it done.
Yeah. Deal with
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
is that gentleman you're talking about the one where you guys almost ran over a kayak in the harbor?
Yeah, he was driving there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did my research. You think I don't do my research, right?
A lot. You've been doing some stalking.
No, yeah. It's not stalking if it's for work, Darren. It's totally.
Right.
It's just called research. It's just called research. Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It was on the Kitchen Maker 18-foot skiff.
Well, I'm impressed you named the boat after your company. That's perfect. And I think I saw that one of the sales was sponsored by Caesarstone.
Yeah, well, I went to them and said, look, I want to keep doing this boat. And it's my little company. It's a bit, it gets a bit expensive. And they said, look, we can't give you any money because they're a public listed company, but they gave us free material to help fund the boat. So they give me a number of slabs of stone every year.
Right.
It's the same as cash to me. And my stonemason gives that to me as a credit on a couple of jobs, and then it's the same. And I've been sponsoring the boat like that for over 10 years, and it works out really well. And God, since I've got about 6 jobs through my sailing on at the moment. That's just at the moment.
Sorry, you've got 6 jobs through sailing, through people you've met
at the
sailing.
moment. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's just at the moment. There's always something hanging around from my sailing connections. It's a really good group of people that understand that, what we do for fun is pretty hard work. So they don't want, they understand that when it's not that easy to get something good. So, they're happy to.
Well, and trust becomes a big part of it, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So I think that the message, the reason that, let me say this. What I like about what you're saying there about getting business through your sailing community is that there are people listening right now who say, well, I have a hobby, but I just can't go do it. I like skiing, or I know another guy that I work with that races at the Bonneville Salt Flats. He holds one of the land speed records. He likes to do that stuff, but it's easy to not do it. It's easy to come up with 1,000 reasons not to do it. But if you want a business reason to do it, it's the soft stuff. You're just never going to know about the relationships you make and the types of people that you meet and the conversations you have that are going to inspire you to do something back at the shop or better in your life or for mission work that you might choose to do.
Exactly. Like I hear people say, I don't want to work for friends and family. I'm like, well, the amount of work that I do for friends and family over the years has been heaps. If you do the right thing, like when I do a job for a friend or a family member, I make them sign a contract. I do everything by the book, tick everything off. And the reason most people, I think, get in trouble when they do friends or family is they're trying to cut costs, and so they try and cut corners with the important stuff like getting the plans right, getting the colours chosen, and helping them choose appliances.
Not following the system.
Exactly.
Right? We don't follow the system, and then we wonder why it didn't work.
I've got a definition of mates rates. Pay me a little bit more because I'm your mate. Like, you can't do it for nothing. And your friends shouldn't expect you to do it for nothing.
Yeah.
Like I'll give them a normal price, and then if the job's gone well at the end, I might give them a discount. But I can't, they're not going to come around and because I did their kitchen cheaper, they're not going to come around on the weekend and mow my lawns or clean my pool or
That's a great point, actually.
Ask
them to do that. Hey, can you knock a few bucks off my kitchen? Sure. Can you come and mow my lawn for a year?
Yeah, can you take a couple of days off work, come and mow my lawns because I did so you're not getting paid because I'm not getting paid working for you. Oh, it's the same thing.
Damn, that is some solid logic. I like that. There's another piece of logic that goes along with that is a little bit different. If I was moving this weekend and I said, hey, could you come over to my house and help me move? I'll give you $36. You'd tell me to go pound sand, right?
Yeah.
But if I said, hey, come on over, help me move, I'll buy a case of beer and a pizza, suddenly it's the greatest deal in the world. I don't know why people take that all the time, right?
Yeah, I know. It's crazy.
It's the same thing, right? So, you got to be careful what you're bartering with.
But like, as I said, and then I've done so much work with friends and family, and then they're so much more likely to recommend you than people off the street. So, so I mean, 90% of our work is referrals. We're getting more and more walk-ins now that everyone's so busy and, just off the website and Instagram. We've got a fair few builders and designers we work for that have got, they do a lot more work on their Instagram and Facebook and stuff than we do, and they always tag us in things we build. So that's just like it just spreads.
Let's take a different angle on this. I'm going to ask you for advice. Okay.
Yep.
So pick a harbor where I might go sailing, but I'm only getting away for the weekend from the States. Would that be Bahamas, or where would that be?
Oh God, I'm going to the Bahamas in January, so I'll be able to report back on that. I'm going to spend 3 months there.
So let's just say I'm in the Bahamas.
I would spend time in the Greek islands. That was fantastic.
Okay. Let's do something close to America. So like some port in the Bahamas, and you walk into the bar and I'm already sitting there and we strike up a conversation. You're a sailor and I'm a sailor. You're sailing around the world, but I just barely got a weekend away. Turns out I'm a cabinet maker and you're a cabinet maker. And so we're sitting there nursing our drink. And I say to you, Darren, how I can barely get away. It took me 6 years to book this 3-day vacation. What do I need to change in my business to be able to take more time off and do more sailing?
Get your staff to take more responsibility for what they're doing. Expect more from your staff. It's the biggest thing down is to expectations. As I said, if you expect them to make 1 cabinet an hour, they're going to make 1 cabinet an hour. But but also the expectations are got to be realistic. If you're expecting them to make 10 cabinets an hour when it's only possible to make 2, they're only going to, that's ridiculous. You've got to have realistic expectations and you've got to expect them. And everyone's got to be responsible for what they do. Like we've got a checklist in our factory for when a kitchen goes out to make sure everything's there. Yeah. We used to get everyone to tick it. So guess what? Everything was always ticked. But when we get everyone to put their name to it, not everything's
so a tick mark ticked. Name versus a tick mark.
Yeah. We get them to put their name to it. When you've checked off that all the kick faces are there. Yeah. Right, your name, it might be Ben, right? Ben down. If it's, you're checking the overall measurements is by the project manager, we still write our name to it. But you've got to be, because if we just had, they'd just get it. I'd watch them, they'd get at the end and they wouldn't even read the checklist and just go,
tick.
Yeah, if
or
you
one
check
line.
The oven fits. Yeah. That was the other thing. Sometimes you just get 1 line down the page. So we changed it to, signing it, and it's
okay. So you and I are still having our beer. We're not finished the beer yet. We're in the Bahamas. You're a sailor. I'm a sailor. You get to sail for months at a time. I can barely get away for 3 days, and it took me 6 years for this vacation. You've already said to me, Dom, you got to hold your people accountable and delegate to them. What do I need to do as a business owner? I think
build
what I heard
systems.
There you go. Build systems and look at my reports.
Look at your numbers and make sure you know your numbers.
Yeah.
And like I've had probably 3 or 4 different, I'd say I've had 4 different business coaches. So most of them were just about worrying about marketing. You got to get your name out. But they weren't worried about where the money was coming from, where we were making money and what we were making money on. And was our pricing right?
The actual point of the business, you mean?
Yeah, exactly. They were just like, get more customers. Yeah. I mean, the best way I found more customers is if we get a little bit quiet, we stop doing it because we're getting too many. But we just call on building sites and introduce ourselves. And I mean, how many times do you hear people say the tradies are slack? And if you turn up on a building site with a folder full of jobs you've done, photos of jobs you've done, and a couple of people they can call and ask, so they never call and ask.
Well, in this market right now, if you show up on a job site to the right builder, right, the right job for you to do, and say, look, we've got some availability, they're going to be very interested in talking to you because shops they're currently using are booked up.
I mean, I did a job that was $1.5K from work, and it was $160,000. That was nearly 10 years ago, so that was a lot of money then.
Yeah.
And I called into that job site 3 times. He goes, the plans aren't ready yet. So I went back 2 weeks later, and then he goes, give me a little bit longer. So I went back a month later, and then I priced it, and I was bang in the middle of the 3 quotes, and I got it. And that person sent us heaps of work too.
I was going to say, and now he continues to send you work, right?
Yeah. The guys, I remember him well. His name was John. I won't say his last name, but he was, he was a really good guy.
That's how that is just how it works. So for anybody listening out there who says, "Oh, there's no business and nobody's answering, nobody wants to do kitchen," yeah, you said rubbish. I said there's a stronger word that I'm not going to use because we don't cuss on the show. But yeah, like it's all in your head. If you think there's no business to be had, you got a problem in your head. And if you think that the best contractors won't work with you, that's in your head too. Go fix it. Go talk to them.
Yeah, just like I wouldn't say it's something that I find easy. The first few times I did it was to work on a building site and say, "Hey, this is me. This is our business. How can we help you?" It's hard to do. Like I'm not saying I'm not a good public speaker or anything like that. And I'd go, "Okay, got to go and do it."
I'd rather knock on a door than build a cabinet. I'll tell you that, man. I'm good. I'm fine. But everybody's different, right?
Yeah. So I went and did it, and it worked. And then and then the more times you do it, like I have no problem doing it these days. The first dozen times I did it, I didn't want to do it, but now I just, if I'm walking past the site, sometimes I'll go and say hello, even if we don't have capacity right then and there for that particular job. I'll still introduce myself and say, "If you got any future projects, here's my card, or can I get your details? I'll flick you an email." I always try and get their details.
I'd like to give you a compliment, but it might take some thinking on it before when I say it. Is that okay?
Yeah.
The other observation I'm making of you as a leader is that you have enough ego to set your ego aside.
Okay. Well, that's good.
Right? Like you've got enough
really
ego.
Think as a business owner, you can't have an ego. I had a guy working for me. He's just gone out by himself, and he's he definitely had a big ego. And we had a few. He was very good at sales, but he was a terrible project manager. And then we had a few. But then saying we had two customers that didn't want to deal with him because I'm pretty sure it was his ego. They said, "Look, if it was a regular builders we work for," and they said, "Look, we're really happy with you guys," but the builders rang up and said, "We don't like this particular guy."
Yeah, we still want to do business with you, but we
yeah.
And that ego can get in the way. But
saying that, it's not entirely his fault because not everyone gets on with everyone. I'm not saying that, but he had I believe his ego was.
But you can have enough ego that it gets in the way. But if you have enough ego to set your ego aside, what I mean by that is the confidence to delegate, the confidence to rely on reports and not think it's all got to be you, the confidence to ask somebody to do something, knowing that they might do it better than you, but that's fine. I don't have to be the best.
I can't draw on the CAD program, and I don't want. I've done training on it 3 times, probably 5 years apart every time, and I don't want. I've just given up now. It's not for me. I'm not anal enough to sit there and do that. It's not my cup of tea.
Yeah.
But I remember when I was teaching my first apprentice, I'd basically I hated scribing kickboard, and fillers and all that. So I taught him to do those things, and we had to do these terrible metal-sided drawers that we used to do, and they had little clips on them. It was a timber drawer front, so we couldn't do them on the CNC. Yeah. It was before CNC days, really. It was really early on in the CNC days. So I taught him how to do those. I taught him all the jobs that I didn't want to do. And now he's project manager, and he does everything. I don't even, today he goes, I won 2 jobs yesterday. I'm like, oh, that's cool. How much were they worth? And that's all a conversation I had about those jobs. And occasionally he'll say, oh, how much would you charge for this? But I'll be sitting at my desk and I'm going, oh, how long is this going to take? I'll go and ask one of them as well. I'll go out and ask the foreman or ask them how long it will take to do a drawing, whatever. You've got to work together. Everyone's
as a team.
Yeah, and everyone.
Let's do that as a team. Let's end on this kind of note. So you're used to being on a boat with people, and it's a mixed crew. You said there's 5 of you, so you take turns.
When we crossed the Atlantic, there was 5 of us, and I only met one of them the morning we left, and the other 3 I'd known for less than a week.
So how do you deal with friction? How do you deal with, hey, Dom's the new guy on the crew, and how do you deal with that?
That is a very good. We had one person that was very prickly, so really? Out of the 5 people we had, there was me and 4 others, and one was, grumpy and stuff all the time. So I did have a word to her. I said, look, try and.
You threw me for a loop there. I didn't expect it to be. I don't know why I didn't expect it to be a her, but she was grumpy. Okay.
Oh yeah, she was grumpy all the time, and just and I said, I said to her, are you having a good time? I said, are you enjoying this experience? She said yes, and I said, well, try and show it. I said, there's a couple of the others are just, I watched you get up this morning at 2:00 because I was up changing sales, and I said, you stamp your feet on the floor, and I said, you just look grumpy. I said, smile. But then I talked to the others and just said, I said, I wasn't sure if it was just me. So I went around and spoke to the others individually. I said, oh, how's everyone getting on? Are you getting on with everyone? And, two of them said, oh, I'm not getting on with this certain person. And then I spoke to the other one again. I said, you're not getting on with her? And she goes, yeah. But she didn't want to say it because she was sharing a cabin with her. And I just said, well, we haven't got much to go. I said, we'll get over it. We've probably got another week. But again, if someone doesn't work on it, I try and remove them from the situation. Like at work, if they're not getting on and they don't fit in, I just, it's not worth it for everyone else. I had a very good, a long-term, we were very good friends when we were younger, and he had his own business and he closed it down. It didn't work. He couldn't delegate. He cannot delegate. He can only work, probably the best tradesman I know, honestly. He can do anything and he's quite quick at it, but he just caused so much friction. And when I was crossing the Atlantic, I got a phone call, can I put him off? And I'm like, I told you to do it a year ago, but I left it up to my manager because he was running the place. Yeah. And he was so good you could get him to do any job, but then he'd sort of tell you how good he was at the end of it. And he'd only do it quickly if he was in a good mood. And in the end, we let him go. And the place is, sure, we don't have that great tradesman, but we still get everything done. And
the place is probably better for it.
Oh, right? It's so much happier. And he had actually spoiled one guy as well. And like that guy left, he moved away, but he was in that guy's ear, and it just spreads. I hate to say that
it's
word,
cancerous.
But it's like cancer.
It's like cancer, or like
so if someone's not fitting in and they're spreading. I shouldn't say this, but if they're young, you can probably get it out of them. But if they're a bit older, it's really hard. You're not going to change their ways. They just you've got to make the conscious decision for your business. Hard decision sometimes, and if you know it's wrong in your gut, it's wrong.
If you know it's wrong in your gut, go with your gut. We've been at this long, and we're business owners who are at the stage in our company to be listening to this podcast. We probably have some wisdom in our gut.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's just not worth it.
Yeah.
And if you're spending time thinking about it when you're away from work, that's what I was like. I'm wondering if he was doing the wrong thing, or if he was causing trouble. If I'm thinking about it out of work, if I'm thinking about that person, they're not the right one.
Yeah.
I've actually come back, and my foreman, I reckon, Drew's been with me 14 and a half years, and his attitude is just so much more open to change than when I left, because we gave him the floor and said, go for it, do it, and we expected him to do it. And he comes and asks now, can we do this? Can we do that? And I was so impressed. And I was standing there the other day. I said, do you reckon they're making the cupboards the quickest way? And Justin, the guy that's working with Eva, he's faster than anyone else. We're going to have a race in the next couple of weeks. We're going to line up 2 cabinets. And I've got $50 on Justin.
That's a good way to do it. That's some fun.
Yeah, but just to make it a bit of fun too. Yeah. But it's and I'm going to video them, and you'll see the difference. It's only the way he moves the pieces around and the way he holds them that's quicker. He can still, the drill, he's using exactly the same drill and exactly the same screwdrivers. It's just the order he's doing it in.
Yeah.
So teach that to the others, and that's what, Drew's finally got he's clicked that he's just got to train them,
Man, you're good at this interview stuff.
This is my 4th one, I think.
Yeah, you've been on a couple of different shows. Well, I mean, you've got such a compelling story. You've skied in the Alps, hopefully the Italian Alps. Come on.
Swiss Alps and French Alps. And a little bit in Italy.
Yeah, of course.
And a little bit in Italy, because Zermatt, when you're skiing Zermatt, you go over to Italy for lunch because it's half the price. And the pizza's better.
What else you done? I got a picture here of you. Are you like sky diving?
Yeah, I've done 10 solo sky dives. I used to do a lot of barefoot water skiing as well. I can barefoot backwards.
Oh, can you?
Which is a totally useless skill now.
I don't know. You get to talk about it on an international cabinet makers show. I mean, there's some value there. 65
kilometers facing the wrong way on your feet.
And then obviously sailing the world and see what's a country you haven't seen yet that you really want to?
More of South America. I've only been to Suriname in South America. So I really want to see South America. And one of my quests is I want to sail to Antarctica. But I think I need a different boat. Another guy did it in a catamaran, which I wouldn't call as seaworthy as my boat, but I want to do a bit more research
before you go.
I'm going to I was meant to go and have lunch with a guy who's been down there 3 times, and I've got to line that up again. Well, I was meant to do it 2 weeks ago.
Maybe one of our listeners has done it or knows somebody who's done it, and they can hook you up in exchange for the great wisdom you've shared with us here. And by the way, do you ever look for crew? I mean, if somebody out there listening is a capable crew, are you looking for crew?
Yeah, well, for different parts. I'm going to be crossing the Pacific next year, so my plan is to go back to the boat in December. I'll spend about 2 or 3 weeks repairing the boat, and then I'm going to sail. The boat's in Trinidad. I'm going to head to the Bahamas for a few months, and then from there I'll go down to Panama Canal and through the Panama Canal, and I want to go to Galapagos first stop, and then probably to the Marquesas. I'm not sure. There's a few different routes you can take across the Pacific, and then aim is to be back in Australia by sort of not this Christmas, the one after. And I'm sure the business will be all right.
I'm sure the business will be right. I'm just impressed with the way you strung all those countries together in a sentence.
I've been thinking about it for a while.
Well, I imagine there's a lot of planning that goes. I mean, I know I have sailed a tiny little bit. And there's a lot of planning that goes into.
The biggest thing for the Atlantic was actually getting all the food. Like, we bought way too much food for the Atlantic crossing, but that's not a bad thing. But the biggest planning is getting all the food and, just getting everyone to work together. Like, I had one crew that was going to come and he didn't want to have regular shifts. And I'm like, no, we're doing regular shifts. And that worked brilliantly. Like, I didn't do shifts, but everyone else did 2 hours on, 6 hours off. Mm-hmm. And then once in the middle of the day, they did a 4-hour shift. And that meant that you weren't on the same shifts at night. So, you'd got sunrise and sunset at different times. And that worked brilliantly. Yeah. And then if they had a problem, because I only really had one other person that could sail, so if they had a problem, they'd just wake me up. So I was always,
so you take unskilled or
semi-skilled? They'd done a little bit of sailing. I wouldn't call them, they'd probably done a competent crew course, which is a couple of days with a, sailing club. But yeah, it wasn't, it sort of works just as well as long as you got, like, I had one other good person, because you don't get too many crossed ideas into, you don't get someone, I've done this before, so let's do it,
Let's do it my way.
Yeah. On the boat, it's quite important that you do have a captain. It's more important than at work, I think, because, you're in the middle of the ocean, one person, if something's going wrong, you just got to take charge.
Yeah.
But saying that, if something's really going wrong at work, you have to change it.
Yeah.
Because, it's like a hole.
Like you said, that guy that was causing a cancer in the company, that has to be changed. It just has to be changed.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, it's exactly the same. It is. If you've got a leak there, no matter how, you've got to fix a leak, and there's no point putting a plug in it. You want to fix it.
Yeah.
There's no point patching it. Just fix it.
I'm sure people would want me to ask at least once, what's the hairiest situation you've run into? We all want to hear about pirates and stuff like that. We want you to be safe. But what's the hairiest situation you've run out to in the ocean?
No pirates, thank God. But I was coming from Saint-Tropez in France down to Mallorca, which is an island of Spain, sort of in the middle of the Med, not far from Ibiza. Everyone would know Ibiza, I'm sure. And we got hit by the wind gauge stopped working when it hit 50 knots. So I don't know what it was blowing, but we had that for felt like an hour. It was probably 15, 20 minutes. And yeah.
That beats up the boat, doesn't it?
Yeah, I had already had one reef in the main. I just pulled the head sail in, then I just turned both motors on and drove into the wind, and then got the mainsail down. I only had one other person on board, and she'd done a fair bit of sailing, but she said, "Oh, you just didn't stop moving." I'm like, "Well, I call this at work too. Well, if I stop moving, no one else is going to keep moving and sort it out. There was only 2 of us on board."
Yeah,
and I think that's the same at work. Being the business owner, if you stop and if you don't continual improve stuff, it all goes bad. Actually, I know we're probably about to wrap up, but my dad had a guy work for him for 9 years, and he left. He worked for 9.5 years. He left 6 months before his long service. He came back 18 years later, and he came back 18 years later, and he still works there now, even though my dad sold the business. He said, the reason why I came back here is, he said, because things constantly change. Everywhere else I've been, he said, it just stays the same. He said, nothing changes. And I think I've watched my dad do that as well.
Yeah.
And he said, but people get bored too. So if you're not improving and not changing things, no one wants to turn up for the same place for 10 years and do exactly. I've kept I believe one of the reasons that my Justin stayed with me, he's a very stable guy. My project manager is because, we constantly change things and we're improving. And he does that as well in his own life.
Yeah. So he appreciates that. I think the only place they don't change is the Department of Motor Vehicles. That just never changes. But the people like that.
Yeah, but how many people stay there for a long time?
Yeah, I don't know.
Have you ever bumped into the same person there?
Never look forward to going back. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Darren.
But I mean, that's a horrible experience for us, and it's probably a horrible experience for the people working there.
Oh, I'm sure it is, right? Yeah, I mean, they know. I don't want to hold you much longer because you've still got the rest of the day ahead of you over there in Australia.
Yeah, well, good.
But thank you so much for being with us. It's been a great interview, and I like the way you wove the stories of sailing and captaining, being the captain into leadership. Yeah. And I hope some people out there are listening, and people have hobbies. I hope they go do them. It just might be taking time to play the guitar.
Oh, man.
Play with your kids.
One of the best things I would ever say is go and spend 3 or 4 months in the Alps. It's an amazing experience. If you're not even, or just 3 or 4 months where you want to spend it, like somewhere you find that's good, life's short.
Kayaking down a river in Alaska. That's what I'd do.
Yeah, well, actually, Alaska's on my list of spots to go to too. I'd love to do the Northwest Passage in the boat, and I want to go to Alaska skiing. So,
yeah, well, call me. You're close to me then. Well, Darren, thank you. I mean, if somebody wants to get in touch with you, how would they do that?
Email me, Darren@thekitchenmaker.com.au, DARREN, or you can find me on Facebook, Darren McKavanaugh, or Instagram, sailing.amazing. Amazing's the name of my boat. I didn't call it that, but I don't want to change it. So,
yeah. And they can find you through me as well, because you'll be linked on the website. Yeah.
And also, I'll just repeat what I said just before when we sort of cut out. By doing this, I learn a lot. And by teaching other people, I think I've learned more than that. Like when I started my business with an apprentice, I'm like, actually, I do know what I'm doing because I'm showing someone else. And until you show someone else, you don't realize what you know.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important to have apprentices and teach them, but also to continue learning yourself. I think and you do that by this is the 4th podcast I've gone, and I'll go back. I'll definitely listen to this because I know there's things that I've told you that I don't realize that don't come up until you get asked the question.
Not that you don't realize
you know,
but you didn't say it out loud and internalize it. Yeah. Excellent. Well, I'm glad I was helpful in that way. That's good.
No, it was good. I enjoyed it. See if I can beat my last podcast at about 2,500 listens.
We'll be able to do that on this show, no problem. I already know.
Challenge for you.
I already know. Yeah.
Okay.
All right, Darren. Thanks so much.
Cheers.
Well. Thank you, Darren McKavanaugh, for joining us here. I'm surprised you had the time. Darren, thank you so much for your insights and for the sort of the casual grace that you had about the wisdom you shared. You run a business on systems. You talked a lot about learning and learning from others and putting those systems in place. I know you have a business coach who showed you the reports you need, who showed you the kind of systems to have in place, but you went and put that in place. And then you had the confidence to step away, not only step away, but ski for a couple of months in the Alps, sail around the world, I think multiple times. I know there's probably a couple of legs that you've done a few times extra. What are the other sports that you've done? But what's important here is that you are on the far side of the extreme to show other people, hey, it's okay to take Friday afternoon off. Hey, it's okay to leave on a Wednesday to take your daughter to dance or your son to football practice or take your kids to the dentist. That's your right as a business owner. Now, how do you earn that right? Well, as Darren said here, he's invested in himself and he still sees himself as a student. You heard at the very end of the episode, he said he's going to go back and listen to this episode to learn from what we talked about here and to continue learning and applying that back inside the business. So he's never done learning. I know that I pride myself on always being in learning mode. What can I learn? I learned so much from my guests. I've learned here from Darren. I've learned from everybody I've had on the show. I learned from every phone call and meeting that I have. And I'm sure you're trying to do the same, which is why you listen to a podcast like this, so that you can intentionally be in front of other people who are forward-facing business owners in this industry. It's so rare and it's so beautiful that we have this opportunity. Podcasts didn't even exist a couple of years ago. And it's amazing how many people don't even know the podcast exists or how to get to one. And yet here you are, you've taken the steps to get yourself in front of success and then get ahead of it and stay ahead of it by listening to people like Darren. Darren, thank you very much for sharing your stories here. How did this inspire you? What are you going to go do based on what you heard Darren doing? I know, I'm going to miss some people, but off the top of my head, here's some hobbies and pastimes that I know people have who listen to the show. I know that one gentleman has a world land speed record in the Bonneville Salt Flats, I think on a motorcycle, believe it or not. I love fishing. I love hunting. I don't really hunt for the trophy unless you call the trophy spending time with my dad, my son, my brother, my cousins, my friends. That to me is the trophy of it. The other trophy is packing something out on my back and being fit enough to do it. Some of you are also interested in going to the gym every day like me. Hey, listen, whatever you choose to do is important to you, and that's what you get to do. Maybe it's your faith and mission work. Maybe that's what's calling you to get systems in place in your business. Maybe that's why you want to turn things around. Well, I'm glad you're listening to the show, because many of us on this show are strong in our faith. And we're doing this so that we do have time to give back, or just to be the best dad or mom or sister, cousin, aunt, uncle, brother, whatever we want to be in the world. That in itself is something to strive for, right? We've got people on the show that play guitar. They're in a band. We've got people here that make guitars. We've got, just like I said, anybody that wants to be the best they can be. So Darren, thank you very much for joining us here. Folks, as you listen to Darren today, I hope it inspired you. One of the things that I do when I work with business owners is I challenge them to find the broken systems. It's called a stress test. And the challenge is leave the office. Leave on a Friday. Friday at noon, walk out of the shop. And I'll tell you what you're going to find out. You're going to find out where your broken systems are. The place isn't going to shut down, but you're going to find out where your broken systems are. And then guess what we do? We go back and we fix that broken system. I could overcomplicate this a million miles from Sunday, but you know what you need to do? Go find the first bottleneck in your business and solve it. Maybe you and your partner have to agree on what that bottleneck is. Maybe you're in a family business where you guys can't agree because you're not meeting and you're not discussing it. Those are all reasons to talk to me. Get me involved in that conversation. Make me the lightning rod. Make me blame Dom. Geez, blame Dom has got to be the chant in so many businesses across North America and the world, and has been for years. And I'm happy to do it because I'm bringing you the hard truth, the reality. We need simple systems in our business. We got to move from scattered to smooth. We got to move from frazzled to orderly. Got to go from chaos to logic. Boring in your business is good. And I can show you how to be boring. No problem. I'm the king of boring. Ask my kids. My dad jokes are pretty bad too. And I don't care. I'm here to deliver a message and deliver it with all the love in my heart to help you get where you need to, which is why Darren came on the show. He volunteered his time to be on the show. All of my guests volunteer their time. What the cost is for you is you've got to go do something. That's our expectation for what we give. I need a sip of my coffee. Here, let's take a commercial break for coffee. If you want to get your business moving from being a bunch of lunatics to logical, consistent, and predictable, then you know what? Give me a call. It's easy. Actually, shoot me a text message. My cell phone number is 604-837-8361. Just say, Dom, let's talk. And then you know what we'll do? We'll talk. It doesn't matter what you want to talk about. It's confidential. You guys know because you've heard all the segments on the show where I stress confidentiality. Like, how many people can be named Fred Flintstone that I deal with? You'll notice that I go through the names of the disciples as the fake names of the companies I make up. I don't even share the country people are in when I share the stories, but the story is the point. And so that's important for us here, right? That's important for us to understand. You're not the only one who has challenges in your business. We all do. I have challenges in my business. I've had challenges in every business I've owned. By the way, just an interesting fact. Do you know that I've raised absolutely $0 for any of the companies I've started, unless you count Visa, racking up my Visa from time to time. but I have borrowed zero money. And I sold one business that I built to $120 million. I sold another business. I'm not at liberty to say the revenue figure, but I had 237 locations across the world in that company. Never raised a dime. So if you're sitting there thinking, I can't grow because I don't have this, I can't grow because I don't have that, I can't grow because X, Y, or Z, then I'm going to encourage you to stop it. Go to the bathroom right now, turn on the cold water, splash it on your face, and then give yourself a slap. It's you. It's me. It's you. It's all of us. If it is to be, it's up to me. And you guys have heard me say this on the show before. What I say to myself when no one else is listening is what the world sees when everyone's watching. So the challenge, again, I'll put in front of you is what'd you learn from Darren? Darren had a great message. Darren goes sailing for months at a time because he has systems in place in the company. He's empowered, it's called empowering your employees. He's found some great people, but he's trained them also to continue being great people. And he's given them some headspace to go and make their decisions. Hey, everybody, this is part of a new piece that we have here on the podcast where we've got question and answers with Dom. Today's question comes from Jeff Gratney. Now, Jeff is a member of the Contractor Strategy Group, which is a private Facebook group we have just for contractors and different construction business owners. He's an electrical contractor in Kalispell, Montana. And here's his question. What are some good methods for marketing? My niche market is government work, industrial, as well as build and design projects. All right, Jeff, I've got an answer for you. Hey, everybody, welcome to Questions and Answers with Dom. This is the segment that's going to be replacing Storytime with Dom because I've done about 300 episodes between two different podcast shows. And I want to be able to answer your questions more than just telling stories from the field and keep it relevant, keep it real. So I put the call out to everybody and Jeff Gratney responded. Jeff is a big supporter. I really enjoy having him as part of the community. He put this question in the Contractor Strategy Group. Now, some of you may have seen this question there already, and we went back and forth a little bit. There's a couple others. Brian Steinhardt also posted a question. We'll be dealing with his coming up. But the Contractor Strategy Group is a free Facebook group, and that's where he was able to put this question. Here's his question. Now, Jeff is an electrical contractor in Kalispell, Montana. Here's his question. What are some good methods for marketing in my niche market, which is government work, industrial, build and design projects? Okay. If you're in that same market as Jeff, where you are doing that commercial kind of work, government work, institutional, industrial, civil work, or the build and design projects, there is a way for you to market, but it's different. It's really different. And I want to tell you a story. I want to take you back to a story you might have heard or seen develop in your own city, in your own town, in your own county, in your own province, or in your own region. And that'll help us really shed some light on this. The idea behind it is I want you to learn how to be a lion in a room full of zebras. Okay, so think about that for a second. I want you to be a lion in a room full of zebras, and here's how it works. You hear about a new major event coming to your, like I said, state, city, province, or country. And that new event is like somebody wants to do something a little bit outside of the norm. Like they want to bring rugby to your town. They want to have like a professional rugby training facility in your town. And you're like, oh, rugby's, I've heard of it. Sounds like a cool sport. Might be interesting. And so they want to bring rugby to your town. You're like, well, that's interesting. Now, the head of it all is Chandler Bing. Now, you don't know this, or sorry, Chandler Bing, we know from friends, but what you also know is you think, why the heck is Chandler Bing involved in this rugby thing? Is he a big rugby player? No. Have you seen Chandler? He couldn't even play eighth man in rugby, right? That's a position in rugby, by the way. He certainly wouldn't be a flanker, and he wouldn't be a prop, never. I don't think he'd even be a back. For those of you who play rugby, you know these positions. But the head of it all is Chandler Bing, and you think to yourself, hey, why is Chandler Bing involved? I thought he owned a bunch of hotels. Why would he care about rugby? And why would he care about a new rugby facility? But anyways, time goes on, for 2 years, the city's talking about this rugby facility and they're starting to get some interest from people. Some people are upset. They don't think rugby should be here. It should be more, money put into football and children's sports that have opportunities for advancement. And rugby is a weird sport on the fringes. Why would we be investing in rugby? But Chandler Bing stays on it. And he stays on it to the point that suddenly the new rugby facility gets announced. And a little while later, you hear some funny other things in the news. Not only was the rugby stadium announced way east of town, but there is going to be a Wyndham Resort across the street, which is a high-end hotel. And there's also going to be La Quinta on the other side of the street and a Ramada on the other side of the street, and even a Super 8 for the budget traveler. And suddenly it starts to come to life. You're like, I get it. I know why Chandler Bing was involved at such an early stage in bringing rugby to our region. He wanted to get an early step on this real estate on the eastern part of town and drive value to that real estate by being part of the early conversations. Have I confused you yet? So, Jeff, what you need to do is you actually need to be part of very boring early stage conversations very early in the process. So, here's how we market to be a lion in a room full of zebras when we're doing civil, institutional, and commercial work that has very long time frames. The first thing you need to do is go to boring events. Sorry, it's going to be boring events. A lot of Chardonnay. But here's where you're going to find it. Look in the back of your local business magazine, and you're going to see some local events coming up. Here's a fantastic one. You're going to see this listed in your local business magazine. You're going to think, oh my, why do I need to go to this? Dom said I need to go to this. Dom said I need to be a lion in a room full of zebras. This is the name of the events we're looking at. The Ring Road Expansion Project Symposium. You want to go to that event. You want to go to the New Port Expansion Environmental Information Night. And the reason that you want to go to that is because when you're sitting there listening to some diplomat talk about, or the government bureaucrat talk about these things, you're going to be a lion in a room full of zebras, because you know who else is in that room? Well, you're sitting there with some coffee and maybe a plate of hors d'oeuvres, and on your left is an architect, and on your right is an engineer, and behind you is a development real estate lawyer, and over there is the big money guy in town. And by the way, at the back of the room is Chandler Bing and his top 3 henchmen, and they're all in that room. And you think to yourself, I must be in the right place. Why are these guys here at the very early stages of talking about the Ring Road Expansion Project? Because they know that the earlier they get involved in these, the earlier they're part of the conversation. They can figure out who's who in the zoo. They can talk to the architects. They can talk to the engineers. They can talk to the land use planning people. And the more they get their name known, the more it's possible that they're going to have a kick at the can. So we've talked about boring events. You also want to find other local, state, or provincial events. Get involved with your Chamber of Commerce. So if let's say your local Chamber of Commerce has like the Wells Fargo or Royal Bank economic forecast meeting, and it's held at some snooty golf course over in the snooty part of town, yeah, that's the event you want to go to, because guess who's going to be in that room? It's not going to be many other electrical contractors. I'm not knocking electrical contractors. I'm not knocking concrete contractors. I'm not knocking anybody. I'm just saying that who goes to that economic forecast, by Wells Fargo or Royal Bank, are the people who care about the long-term economic growth. And who's sitting around you? The architects, the engineers, the lawyers, the investors, the civil engineering companies, the architect from Dubai who flew in just to do this. And you're thinking, why would an architect from Dubai fly into this event here in our town? This makes no sense. You're onto something, my friend. You're at the early stages of greatness, and that's how you win these big projects. All right, here's another one. I've seen this one, the Economic Forum on Legume Production in the Midwest. You're like, oh my goodness. But then you start to hear that there's going to be a spur railway happen. And that spur railway is going to make an old town that had been on the decline maybe have a little bit of bump, because they're going to put a siding in there. And you think to yourself, geez, I wish I could scrape together a few bucks to buy some real estate. And all around you in that room are the architects, the engineers, the designers, the lawyers, and the real estate investors who are thinking the very same thing. And isn't it funny, my friend Jeff Gratney, they're going to need to power these things. They're going to need to put power along this rail siding. They're going to need to power those buildings. They're going to need to build, right? Chandler Bing is there, and he wants to build some hotels. And where is he going to build hotels? Well, he just bought some land near where that new spur railway siding is going. So that's how these things work. Okay. I want you to think about this to answer the question. Where do land developers, architects, and city planners go to hang out? Oh, it's going to be dry. I mean, they're good people, don't get me wrong, but it's not going to be super exciting. But go find out where the land developers in your town hang out. What events do they go to? Where do architects go to get their information? Where do they go hang out when they're doing their marketing? Where do city planners go to learn their information? You might find the Conference of Municipal Leaders happening. Oh, so much fun. What about the Association of Police Chiefs who are having a meeting in your town? Well, what are they going to need, Jeff? They're going to need high security, and that's going to have to be delivered by having solid electrical systems in place. Maybe they need diesel backup generators in a secure facility. Just so happens you're an expert at that. And you know who else is going to be there? The really, really smart guy in your city who also does concrete work, because he knows at the Association of Police Chiefs meetings, he's going to learn things that are going to help him be more valuable to that crowd. So look for those weird meetings, right? What I want you to do is network, and you're going to be a lion in a room full of zebras. By being in that room, you're going to elevate yourself automatically, because the architect and the engineer standing next to you while you're having a glass of wine or a cup of coffee, you're going to say, well, Jeff, what do you do? You're going to say, well, I'm an electrical contractor. And they're going to say, well, we're an architect and we only build industrial facilities, and we only build hospitals, and we only build, et cetera, et cetera. And by virtue of the fact that you're in the room, they're going to go, well, this Jeff Gratney guy must be the electrician that works on these kinds of buildings as well. And so you start to move up the food chain, right? The next thing you want to do, this is a completely different strategy, is have strategic alliances with engineering firms, right? So who are the engineering firms that you can go hang out with? How can you create a strategic alliance with them? You're going to want to go find out who they are, and then start to hang out in the places they hang out, and then develop those relationships. These big deals come through relationships. They don't come through some bid network website. I mean, they can, but generally these come through relationships that you have to build. And you know what it's like, guys. You do a $10,000 contract, and then everybody sees you as a $10,000 contractor. And then you start to do $15,000 contracts, and everybody sees you as a $15,000 contractor. And then you take a jump up to $30,000. Everybody goes, hey, Jeff did a good job at 30 grand. He's our $30,000 contractor guy. And you keep moving your way up until you're the $50,000 contractor guy and a $100,000 contractor guy. And you do that through these relationships. Get good. This is the next one. Get good at following another leader. So get really good. Jeff, you're going to be the leader in Montana for electrical work. Well, who's just like you in the plumbing world? Who's just like you in the alarm installation world? Who's just like you in the landscape world? Who's just like you in the concrete forms world? Where are the guys that sell and service cranes going? Where are the guys that rent very heavy duty construction equipment going to hang out? When you can find where they are, you'll find the hotspot. Anyways, Jeff and everybody, I hope that helped you to understand how to do more civil, institutional, and commercial work. It's a different kind of marketing for sure. It's a clever kind of marketing, and it's much more like chess than it is like snakes and ladders. Thanks for your question, Jeff. I appreciate it. If you're listening to this and you have a question for me as well, please go to speakpipe.com/Ask Dom. Make sure to tell us a little bit about yourself and then leave your question. I'd be happy to answer it here on the podcast. Have a great day.